Week 1 of the Diddy case was insane. The trial has been happening. We got week 2 just wrapped. Brett Cooper's here to give us a recap. So let's see what's been going on, man. Let's see how insane it's gotten. I bet it's gotten 10 times more insane. And I'm here for it. Buy a t-shirt down there in the description, man. They're my own designs. Let's go.
Now, on a more serious note, I think it is time that we turn our attention back to Diddy. Week 2 of the trial has ended, and we have a lot of updates. So as I said in my last Diddy episode, the defense was obviously going to make it seem like Cassie was a willing participant in all of this and all of the freak-offs, and that is exactly what they did.
I mean, even if she was, in quotes, willing, was she really willing? Or was she just trying to be part of the culture? Trying to survive?
Team of lawyers, as we discussed, is just full of heavy hitters who play dirty, and they did not tone it down at all when they were cross-examining Cassie Ventura, who obviously, if you guys are following the story now, is Diddy's longtime ex-girlfriend. And throughout their cross-examination, they were focusing in on one specific thing, and that was the text messages between Diddy and Cassie. Here is one example. This is from 2012. Combs told Cassie that he wanted to FO one last time tonight, using initials for freak off, FO. Cassie replied, "What?" And Combs said, "You can't read?" And then Cassie replied, "I don't want to freak off for the last time. I want it to be the first time for the rest of our lives." Here's another exchange they brought up. This one was from August of 2009. Combs asked when she wanted the next encounter to be, and she replied, "I'm always ready to freak off." 2 days later, Cassie said,
It's so weird that they're like actually calling it a freak off. That's so fucking gross and like cringy and totally something that 50-year-olds would say.
an explicit message, and he replied in eager anticipation. She responded, "Me too. I just want it to be uncontrollable." Combs' lawyers have insisted that all of the sex at the freak-offs was completely consensual. Later that year, however, she also sent Combs messages that she was frustrated with the state of their relationship and needed something more from him than just sex. So, obviously, we know that their relationship was incredibly sexual, we know that it was volatile, and we do have these texts. Like, everybody can see these, she talked about them in her cross-examination, and in my personal opinion, I feel like it's going to be hard for the defense to contradict everything that the prosecution has brought forward that demonstrates that he was blackmailing her and that she was terrified of him. And so using her text messages that show that she was saying that she likes the freak-offs doesn't necessarily mean that it was all completely consensual if she was truly scared for her life and actually being blackmailed in the way that we have been told.
Yeah, and then she's just pretending to be on board with it so she can survive.
That she was blackmailed. And of course she's not going to push back against him or do anything to make him angry when we have now seen the kind of man that he is and the things that he would threaten to do to her. I mean, if the only evidence was her word versus these text messages, that would be one thing that would make it a lot more complicated, but we know
Yeah, and the things that women will put up with in order to keep their lives how they want them. You know, they don't want their lives to change, be uprooted. They want that routine. They want the security of knowing this is how it's going to be forever. But sometimes, you know, shit gets out of hand and you don't want that to be forever. So changes has got to be made. And here we are.
this point that it's not. And the prosecution only strengthened their argument about this blackmail, about this power imbalance, when Cassie's mom, Regina Ventura, took the stand, and she testified that Combs, in anger over one of his and Cassie's many breakups, threatened to release one of these freak-off videos of Cassie if they did not give him $20,000. And so her parents were trying to protect her. They frantically took out a $20,000 loan to send him the money. They never spoke to him. They just wanted to protect her. But like, those are the types of things.
That's straight up blackmail, man. Blackmail, man? No. Blackmail, man.
Things that he would do and what he would hold over her. So is that actually consensual? I think that is something that the jury is just going to have to decide. Now, in addition to Cassie's mother, we also saw some other new faces take the stand, including close friends and collaborators of Cassie's. But before we get into their testimony, which is just heartbreaking, I do want to take a break to tell you about my sponsor, 7 Weeks Coffee. And I am so excited to be promoting Nimi Skincare again. Now, So going back to these new testimonies, here is one instance of abuse that her best friend witnessed, and she took the stand, and Morgan, her name, testified that the second incident took place in Jamaica in 2013, where they were on a group vacation. She said that while Cassie was using the bathroom, Combs became angry that she was taking too long and set out to find her. Morgan then allegedly heard guttural screams and ran to the hall to find Combs dragging Cassie outside by her hair. Outside,
Dude, this guy's fucking unhinged. And like, how come nobody stopped this guy sooner? I don't give a fuck if the dude's a billionaire. which he probably wasn't. Probably just like a multimillionaire. But like, if I saw that happening, I'd be like, hey, bro, you need to calm the fuck down. Because I mean, he might do something to me later, but you know, I'm probably not thinking about that in the moment. But like, he's gonna have to cut that shit out of, especially if I got a gun on me, and I'm telling everybody, you're gonna have to get me, because I won't be quiet.
She allegedly managed to get up, and Combs then pushed her onto the ground, where she hit her head on the bricks. Morgan testified that she believed Cassie was knocked out, but her friend later ran into the woods barefoot. Morgan said that when she found Cassie, she hid in a ditch for what felt like hours while Combs searched the property for them. I mean, guys, at every turn, all the stories that we hear are horrifying. Like, I think we know now the kind of relationship that this was. But again, even though we're hearing all of these stories, I do want to clarify that this case isn't about abuse. It is about the racketeering. It is about sex trafficking. And so stories like this obviously give us insight into his character. They support everything else, but
Yeah, but it really, you know, puts Diddy in a bad light in the court of public opinion. He's not going to be able to work in public facing industry anymore. Like, anything that shows his face where he's the main staple, not happening. Even if none of this sticks and he's freed. Like, this has tainted his reputation forever.
this isn't what he's being charged for. Now, in addition to these friends and Cassie's mom, a man named George Kaplan also testified. That is Diddy's former assistant. And this one actually does really give legs to the racketeering charge, because he would set up hotel rooms for Diddy, he would pick up drugs for Diddy, paying for all of them in cash, and he also testified that Diddy constantly threatened his job. And so what I'm seeing here is we are now moving.
Of course he did. That's just the type of person he is. Threats. He's the mob boss. He's the king. What he says and does goes. What he wants sticks. Or else.
Outside of just Cassie, obviously, this is where the lawsuit started. This is what really brought attention to everything that Diddy was doing. But again, it is going to get so much bigger than just this relationship. Now, this federal case does stem from Cassie's 2023 lawsuit, which we talked about last week. But
I'm calling it now. I think there are going to be more cases after this. If Diddy doesn't go down for this whole racketeering stuff, there's going to be more stuff.
even though this case is about a very particular set of charges, I do think that we should quickly look at the other civil suits that are up against Diddy. After Cassie's very public lawsuit.
Oh yeah, there already are other cases against him. Yeah, what about that Kid Cudi thing I've been hearing about?
In less than 24-hour settlement that, again, we talked about last week, 70 other civil lawsuits were filed. Now, to give you guys a timeline, Diddy's house was raided in March of last year, so this was 2024. In September, he was arrested and he was charged, and there were 9 lawsuits that were filed before his house was raided. There were 5 in between his house being raided and him being arrested, and then over 50 different lawsuits have been filed since his arrest.
Dude is so cooked. He's gonna be in court for the rest of his life.
Now, around 5 of these lawsuits allege that the victim was a minor at the time of the incident. Most of these accusers are female, but there are quite a few men that have also come forward in these suits. And what has possibly been an even bigger conversation than anything else we're talking about is that some of these lawsuits are also against other celebrities, which is not the case in this federal lawsuit. They are not involved in Cassie and Diddy. This is just about Diddy. Now,
yeah, I can't wait to see who those names are. I'm gonna be following this whole Diddy drama all the way through. Everybody that's connected.
Now, the most notable of these lawsuits is the case that was brought against Diddy and Jay-Z for drugging and raping a girl when she was 16 years old. A third female celebrity who has not been named allegedly stood by and watched, but she was not included in that lawsuit. And this lawsuit has now been dropped. That came out in December, at the beginning of December. Aaron Hall is involved in another lawsuit from a woman who alleges that the two of them, Diddy and Aaron, raped her, and Diddy then choked her. In another lawsuit, Diddy's first employee at Bad Boy Records, a music producer, is being accused of gang raping a 17-year-old girl with Diddy and another celebrity that has not been named. Rodney Jones Jr., aka Lil Rod, has accused Diddy of grooming him and then passing him off to actor Cuba Gooding Jr., who has already pleaded guilty to forcible touching in a previous case. And then, guys, this is even crazier to me. 2 of Diddy's sons are named in separate lawsuits against them and Diddy for sexual abuse. Those are his sons, Justin and Christian. Lucian Grange, this is Sophia Richie's father-in-law. He is the CEO of Universal Music Group. He was also named as a defendant in a lawsuit for...
Bro, it's all connected. They're all creeps. Like, even if all of this stuff isn't true, some of it's gotta be true. For one, the odds are just stating that something happened. This kind of stuff just happens around Diddy. So fucked up, man. All these people are so fucking evil. How do you get to that point? Like, why do you care to do these things that are evil? I've never in my life wanted to do evil things like this.
Aiding and abetting Diddy's sex trafficking and racketeering, although his involvement was dropped from that specific suit. OBJ has been named one of the most shocking lawsuits when a young woman claims that she was gang raped by Diddy, OBJ, and other men after she accused Diddy of killing Tupac. I mean, there's so much here. And so the public is thinking about all of these cases. We have read articles about all of this. And so even me, like...
The whole Tupac situation, that is a rabbit hole. That goes deep. And I think he did it. I think Diddy did it.
Going into this huge 8-week-long trial, I was like, oh my gosh, it's all coming out. This is everything. But it's not. Like, this isn't like Epstein, where there was a possibility for everything to come out in that one big case. It is just about Diddy and Cassie. And this has understandably made this case very confusing because people, like myself, were mixing these civil suits with what he is being charged with right now federally. I mean, when Diddy was first arrested, we all saw the pictures of his notorious white parties. They began flooding the airwaves, and people were claiming that all the people who were in those photos that attended those parties were actually attending freak-offs. The white parties were the freak-offs. Everyone in the photos was implicated in all of these cases. I mean, similarly, everybody immediately started saying that Justin Bieber had been sex trafficked by him. The internet began spiraling.
I still think that it probably did happen.
Quickly spinning rumors into truth. We had no idea what was going on, and from what I heard, just because obviously I have been talking to some people close to Bieber, based on what I have heard from that camp and what Bieber has now said in a public statement, he was not sexually abused by Diddy. And so I just want to say that here once and for all. Now I do want to...
Unless he did some things that he's not proud of and he's not going to admit it. Sexual abuse doesn't have to be, you know, with Diddy and Justin Bieber, or with Justin Bieber and somebody else that's close to Diddy. It could be Diddy and Justin Bieber doing things together.
Take a step back because we all saw the videos, we watched Justin grow up, and so I think we can say that, you know, was Justin put in uncomfortable positions as a young man? Yes, absolutely. Was he sexualized by the media and the music industry as a whole? Yes. Was he asked or pushed to engage in spiritually dangerous and immoral activities? Yes. Those aren't rumors. I've actually heard that from people, but he denies that even though that might have happened, he denies that he was a Diddy victim. Now, it's also important to note, kind of in light of talking about it.
Yeah, he was probably creating one of the Diddy victims with Diddy.
Everything with Justin and how this industry operates, that Diddy is just the tip of the iceberg. And most people out there, including myself, do not believe that he acted alone, not just with his freak-offs, but with...
I think there's probably worse operations going down, and Diddy was just dumb enough to get caught.
The degradation of this industry as a whole. I mean, think about all the names that we just mentioned in those 63 lawsuits. And guys, interestingly, there is one person that just keeps getting brought up time and time again, and he also just keeps getting away with it. And that man would be Clive Davis, the aging, very much aging, co-founder of Bad Boy Records. Now, before we get into how insane this story is and giving you the backstory, I just need to paint a picture for you, because when all of this started, this was a very, very different time. So imagine that we are all in the 70s, and the government has just begun cracking down on organized crime because the RICO Act was signed into law in 1970. So why did this act come about? Well, the Mafia had infiltrated all of the big industries, and the music industry for the Mafia was a no-brainer, including jukebox plays, record sales, nightclub entry fees, and it gave mob bosses the ability to control and extort labels and artists through these avenues, including distribution.
That's what I've been saying this whole time, that Diddy is just involved in the new Mafia. The Mafia basically had to go into hiding and just take over all these industries, and they were still doing evil, crazy shit behind the scenes.
Through jukeboxes, control of the venues where artists got to perform, all of that, they had their hands in everything. And another part of this, something that the mob also had their hands in, was referred to as indies. Now, these indies were people, and they were people who were hired by labels to secure airplay for songs, often using cash and gifts, drugs, or other incentives that would get the radio stations to play these certain songs. And this was not something that the record labels were doing overtly. They had to do this through third parties because this was actually illegal. It was illegal to pay for airtime without disclosing it, and this was called payola. So now that you have that context, we can introduce you to Clive Davis. Now, this is the man that is behind some of the world's most iconic bands and artists throughout the entire music industry, and he is also the man behind Diddy's rise. I mean, this man...
That's always how it goes. The people at the very top that are controlling everything are evil, creepy, and fucking weird.
has worked with everybody from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, Santana, Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, Aerosmith, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Neil Diamond, my personal favorite. I used to fall asleep to him every single night growing up, Pink Floyd, Whitney Houston, Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Brad Paisley, Usher, Outkast, and Pink. But, in the 70s, he was the music industry. If you were somebody who was working with Clive Davis, it was almost a sure bet that you were going to be successful. Now, Clive started his career at Columbia Records, and he quickly rose to the top because of his talent and his eye for music, and all thanks to Clive Davis himself. Columbia Records was a powerhouse in the 70s, and their revenue was up significantly. One article from around that time says that rock has moved from only 15% of Columbia's volume to more than 50%, and CBS record sales have risen from 170 million to 340 million each year. Clive Davis, was able to win over top talent by paying well and offering considerable artistic freedom. John Phillips of the Mamas and Papas said, quote, "He always sent the limousines and the flowers at the right time." So everything for Clive and Columbia Records was looking up. The music industry was changing daily, all thanks to Clive. And then in May, in 1973, Clive Davis was abruptly fired after a Columbia Records internal investigation. Now, Columbia has publicly stated that the reason for the termination of his contract early—
I can't believe the whole Diddy saga goes all the way back to 1970 with the RICO Act.
was that he was misappropriating funds. But everyone in the music industry who was clued in that knew Clive knew that it had to be more than that. Take a look at this Time article from 1973. They said, others in the records business, where expense money is thrown around, doubted that the CBS charges against Davis could be the full explanation. To them, the action against Davis seems unduly harsh in an industry that abounds in stories of much worse transgressions, chiefly the providing of drugs to rock groups and disc jockeys. Quote, "If we had somebody really important who wanted dope, we would probably give it to him," says the vice president of one of CBS's biggest competitors. "I think Davis is taking the rap for everybody." Now, in addition to all of that—
That's fucking insane, Well, I mean, he makes millions and millions of dollars, but he likes to diddle kids. So let's get him some kids, I guess. We gotta make that money. We just look the other way. Oh, hey, you want to diddle some kids? That's none of my business.
And those theories, looking through news articles from around the time, it is very obvious that Columbia was being investigated for payola, as this internal investigation was happening with Clive Davis. In fact, here's a headline from that year that reads, "Clive Davis ousted, payola cover-up charge. Columbia Records president is fired from CBS amid allegations of misuse of funds and providing drugs to artists and disc jockeys." Now, the rumor at the time, and sort of still is that Columbia used Davis as a cover-up so that the company would not be investigated further. This man was the fall guy. They were basically saying there was nothing to see here. Yes, our president was funneling money, but that was just for personal reasons. Nothing to see here. He was most definitely not working with the Mafia, doing payola, or supplying people with drugs. And guys, you also need to understand how big being charged with payola with something like this could have been. Like, Columbia Records would not have survived that scandal. And again, this was not something that was hush-hush. Another article from around the time reads that the government is probing an elaborate scheme in which Columbia and perhaps other record companies may have been bilked of many millions of dollars. Columbia Records alone reportedly lost $2 million. Investigators are trying to find out whether the Mafia had a firm foothold in the record industry or whether Columbia Records scandal was an isolated incident. Now, here is where the Mafia ties really begin. So a month before Clive was fired, one of his employees, one of his close associates, was also—
I think now we've just got what used to be the Mafia, got entangled with all this weird DEI stuff in the government. Now we got the gay Mafia. The fuck happened?
Fired for misappropriation of funds, and his office was interestingly sealed for—
Actually, I know exactly what happened. It was when the Mafia got entangled up into the porn industry. That's when everything went sideways.
investigation. And this man had been more directly linked to the mob, specifically the Genovese crime family. And it's all written about in another article from 1973. So this one reads, "The first rumors had begun to fly during, quote, a week to remember. David Winshaw, 52, vice president of artist relations at Columbia, had been busted. He had been locked out of his 12th floor office a couple of weeks ago, and there was talk about prostitution and drugs. The FBI, the rumors said, had invaded CBS's Black Skyscraper and seized files from Winshaw's office, and CBS had cordoned off the room and fired the 11-year veteran. Winshaw, it was said, was close to Clive Davis and was variously known around the company and in the business as Davis's royal procurer or Clive's pimp or the all-around Dr. Feelgood. He had, the hearsay went, been moved over to special projects and took care of conventions, providing any necessary entertainment entertainment for Columbia executives and favored guests. Now David Winshaw, unlike Clive, did serve a year in prison, and his story seemed to kind of die down there until 2021 when Winshaw gave another interview. And in this interview, he said that everyone knew he took the fall for Clive Davis.
It's crazy all these things that can just happen in front of everybody's faces, right under their noses, because there was no internet. Because on the internet, one person can post one thing about something and then millions upon millions and billions of people can know about it. But one person would be like, hey, that place is run by the Mafia and they're doing all kinds of criminal shit in there. They tell one person, and then one person tells one person tells one person, you know, and the story dies. Because they're entangled into the entire industry to the point where articles are not going to be made about them. Because they're part of it. And it just doesn't work like that anymore.
Federal investigators who had launched an ultimately fruitless search for evidence of payola would allege that Winshaw had conspired with a member of the Genovese crime family to defraud CBS of $75,000 through sham bills from non-existing companies, a scheme that earned Winshaw a 1-year jail sentence. Nobody has suggested that Davis knew a thing about the involvement of the mob, though skeptics contend that a micromanager like Clive Davis had to know about the invoices that Winshaw drafted. According to Winshaw, there is little doubt on the matter. Now 80 years old and living in Florida, he said in a brief phone interview that, quote, everyone knows I took the fall for Davis. How does a man run a bar mitzvah that he doesn't know about? The circumstances of his exit, Winshaw says, ruined me, though he still admires Davis's talents. I have no animosity. The guy doesn't want to know me. That's fine. Looking back, some former colleagues say that CBS got spooked by the payola investigation and jettisoned Davis, hoping to mollify the government and stave off penalties that might jeopardize its broadcasting licenses. And guys, the reason why I did this entire history lesson on the music industry in the 70s and Clive Davis and Columbia Records is because it is simply so wild to me that while David served a year in prison for all of this,
it's almost as if criminality is ingrained into Hollywood culture. Huh? Who knew? Who knew?
Clive walked away free and maintained his career. And then, many years later, in 1994, he fatefully started Bad Boy Records with none other than P. Diddy. Now, to bring it all back to the case at hand and the freak-offs, we don't know how involved Clive was with Diddy's affairs. We can just put it that way. But we do know that Clive was responsible for starting Diddy's career and that they were very close friends.
Yeah, no shot he wasn't involved in all of the weird sex stuff.
And so it's fair and it's very valid for all of us to wonder why and how P. Diddy was able to get away with all of these crimes for so long and what led him down such a dark, twisted path.
Money! Always money. And power. But the power just brings more money. So money!
And it's just interesting, whether it's related to Diddy's cover-ups or not, that his mentor, his confidant, his close friend, his business partner, was tied to one of the biggest payola scandals in music industry history and has walked away scot-free from crimes, also including tax evasion, for his entire very long life.
That's because the government is also just as corrupt in the same way, and they're all shaking hands behind closed doors. Money's changing hands.
And I mean, hey, maybe Diddy just learn from the best. Now, while a lot of this is unverified, a lot of people think that it goes even deeper than that, even darker than that.
Oh, 100%. I think we're about like maybe 2% the way into this dark tunnel.
A lot of people in the music industry have spoken out about this relationship. For example, Suge Knight, who is a rapper who is in prison for manslaughter, has claimed multiple times over the years that music executives, including Clive Davis, have used sexual abuse, drugs, and alcohol to control their artists. Take a listen to this clip from a recent interview he did with Chris Cuomo.
To me, that sounds like what I hear when people are talking about abusive situations, you know, hurt people, that someone was sexually abused, they wind up being a perpetrator. Is that what you're suggesting about Sean Combs, that he was sexually abused and he now sexually abuses?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think he repeat what was done to him. And like I said, if you look at Russell Simmons, you know the truth. Andre Rail, you know the truth. Clive Davis, you know the truth. Jimmy Iovine, you know the truth. The industry is a quick business. It's been like that for a long time. And the casting couch is real, but it's for women and men.
And throughout this interview, which was done 7 months.
That's fucking insane. And like, he's got no reason to lie about that. And, you know, it seems to be true anyway, even if he doesn't say anything about it.
Months ago, he offered horrifying examples of what that looked like. For example, Knight claimed that Diddy was, quote, taught by the people before him, and he did to the younger people after him. Quote, it is an industry that, according to Knight, has a long history of sexually abusing and assaulting its newest members. He said one practice called an egg test went as follows. And just for warning, this is insane, but he says, quote, those guys pull their pants down and bent over. They stick the egg up their ass, their eggs break. They say they're not ready yet. They ain't put enough work in. This is Hollywood. And then he goes on to say that the only place where you would put in the work so that your egg wouldn't break.
When did this start? When did all this start? That's fucked up. Did it start in 1970? Or was this happening like in the 20s and 30s? When the Hollywood culture really, you know, like Tinseltown and all that. When everything really started booming. When did it all go wrong? I really would like to know.
Was at these types of parties. I can't, it's like, guys, it's so insane. And yet we're hearing this from so many people. Like, at this point, it can't be a conspiracy that this is how Hollywood and these entertainment industries...
Oh, she means conspiracy theory. No, 100% it is a conspiracy. Not a conspiracy theory. This shit's actually happening.
Run. And guys, in every one of these stories, from people other than just Suge Knight, in every story, Clive Davis gets brought up. His influence even made its way to Sean Ryan's podcast. Now, of course, over the years, Clive Davis's team has denied all of these allegations. They say that he knew nothing, that he was never involved, and these days, he plays the role of the geriatric old man who just won't answer questions.
A lot of people are curious about the status of P. Diddy.
Status of what?
P. Diddy. Diddy.
Like puppy. The status of puppy.
But as we've learned from Justin Bieber and other...
What a piece of shit, man. Like, pretending he don't know what he's talking about. Like, oh, I can't hear you. You know, I'm probably gonna be like that when I'm an old man too, but I'm not gonna be hiding evil shit. I'm just gonna be fucking with people at the store.
Like him, the abuse and the blackmail and the control happening within the music industry and Hollywood runs deep. And this story is still only getting started. So next week we will be back for another Diddy update because the trial is still ongoing.
Yeah, and this whole thing is fucking insane. And it just keeps getting crazier, it goes even deeper. I bet it goes even past 1970. Might be 1950, 1940. Shit, probably started in fucking Civil War times. Who knows, man? Research needs to be done about this. How far back does this creepy shit go from Hollywood? Where did it start? Did it start in Hollywood or did it start somewhere else and creep its way in? Maybe it created Hollywood in the first place. I don't know. I got t-shirts down there in the description. You should buy one. I'm out.